On April 20th, 2020, a Texas-based oil futures trader posted screenshots on Reddit showing a $240,000 loss in less than an hour. His strategy was solid, his win rate consistent. That morning, everything looked perfect. No major losses, a system in sync, a market moving in his favor. But after hours of staring at the screen, drowning in price noise, his mental bandwidth collapsed. Same desk, same charts, same rules. The only thing that changed was his brain's ability to process and act. If your phone battery hits 1%, it still turns on. The app's still open, but everything slows, glitches, or freezes entirely. A trader's brain is no different. Each morning, you wake up with a limited pool of cognitive energy, like the RAM in a computer. Every decision, every chart you scan, every headline you read, drains a little more of it. At full capacity, you see clearly and react with precision. When it runs low, you start clicking out of emotion, missing key signals, or closing trades too soon, or far too late. The worst part? You often don't realize it's happening until you check your account. Welcome to Trading Psychology Stick, where we unpack the hidden forces that quietly move your P&L. Quick disclaimer, this isn't financial advice. It's psychological insight, drawn from years of working with traders who've learned these lessons the hard way. NASA's research on cognitive load shows that when working memory is overloaded, the brain's processing power nosedives, reaction time slows, and judgment skews. This isn't just true for pilots or surgeons. It's true for anyone making high-stakes decisions in a high-pressure, data-dense environment. And trading is exactly that. In this video, we'll break this phenomenon apart. You'll see why mental bandwidth is a genuine trading edge, how to recognize when you're nearing your limit, and most importantly, how to guard it like the rare resource it is, so every decision you make is sharp, intentional, and free from the fog of fatigue. And if you think skill and experience alone will save you from hitting that wall, wait until you hear the story of a 20-year veteran trader who ignored these warning signs. Chapter 1. The Hidden Enemy and Your Daily Budget. The market doesn't kill you, your brain bandwidth does. That's the uncomfortable truth most traders never hear, until it's too late. You might think your biggest threat is volatility, fake-outs, or a sudden news spike. But in reality, the most consistent killer of trading accounts is invisible: cognitive overload. Picture this: a fighter pilot in a high-speed jet, locked in a dogfight. His radar is lit with targets, alarms are blaring, and the control stick demands split-second precision. But the real danger isn't the enemy on his tail. It's his brain trying to process too much at once. He misses one key signal, makes one delayed decision, and the mission is over. Now swap the cockpit for your trading desk. Multiple charts flashing, alerts pinging, market news scrolling in one corner, Discord chat buzzing in another. You think you're handling it all until you realize you've just taken a trade that violates your own rules. Here's the thing. Your brain is like a phone battery. Every morning, you wake up at 100%. But unlike your phone, you can't just plug it in and instantly recharge. Every choice, every calculation, every ounce of focus drains that battery, your daily budget of mental energy. And in trading, that budget burns faster than you think. Think about the last time you had a long day at the charts. Maybe you started fresh, reviewing your plan, scanning markets with clarity. By mid-morning, you'd already made a few decisions: which pairs to watch, which levels to mark, which alerts to set. Each one cost you a few percentage points of your mental battery. Then news hit. You had to interpret it, adjust your bias, maybe cancel an order. Another few percentage points gone. By the afternoon, you're making trades you wouldn't normally take, not because your system changed, but because your brain's energy reserves have been chipped away trade by trade, click by click. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. The more decisions you make, the lower the quality of the next one. It's not about willpower, it's biology. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles logic, planning, and impulse control, runs on a limited supply of glucose. As it drains, your ability to resist bad trades, spot subtle risks, or follow your own plan starts to collapse. A famous study with judges making parole decisions found something startling. In the morning, prisoners had about a 65% chance of being granted parole. By the end of a decision-heavy session, that number dropped to almost zero, not because the cases were worse, but because the judges were mentally drained. After a break or a meal, the approval rate jumped back up. The human brain works in cycles, and your trading is subject to the same biological rules. So, if your daily battery starts at 100%, the question isn't, can I trade all day? But, where will I spend my energy for maximum return? And here's what makes it worse. Not all mental strain is the same. Your brain faces three distinct types of load, and if you don't know the difference, they'll drain you without warning. Chapter 2. The three types of cognitive load. Not all mental strain is the same. Just like your phone has different apps draining its battery in different ways, your brain faces three distinct types of cognitive load. And if you don't know how to recognize them, they'll drain you without warning. The first is intrinsic load, the built-in difficulty of the task itself. In trading, this is the mental effort required to understand the market structure, read a candlestick pattern, or interpret a new indicator. It's the unavoidable cost of doing the job. A simple price action set up on one time frame, low intrinsic load. A multi-time frame analysis with macro fundamentals layered in, that's a heavy lift. You can't remove intrinsic load entirely, but you can manage it by matching the complexity of your tasks to the mental energy you have available. The second is extraneous load, the unnecessary distractions, clutter, and noise that hijack your focus. Imagine trying to execute a trade while news headlines flash in the corner, your phone vibrates, and 3 Discord chats are debating the next big move. These aren't part of the trade's actual difficulty, but they still tax your brain. Extraneous load is dangerous because it's often self-inflicted. You tell yourself you're staying informed, but what you're really doing is burning bandwidth on irrelevant noise, leaving less for the decisions that matter. The third is Germane Load, the mental work you spend on actually making sense of what you're doing, building your trading schema, and integrating lessons from each trade. This is the good load. It's the strain of thinking deeply, reflecting, and learning. It can be tiring, but it builds skill over time. The trick is balancing Germane Load so it grows your ability without tipping you into overload. Here's how these play out in the real world. A trader starts the day with high energy. Intrinsic load is manageable, the market's calm, the setups are straightforward. But they keep one eye on the news feed. Adding extraneous load, jump into Twitter debates, more extraneous load, and try a new strategy mid-session without preparation. Intrinsic load spike. By the time the perfect setup appears, their Germane Load, the capacity to think and act with precision, is already squeezed out by all the junk. They miss the entry, or worse, enter sloppily. It's like trying to cook a complex meal while someone's playing loud music. Your kids are asking questions, and the TV is blaring. The recipe itself might not be that hard, but good luck following it accurately with all that chaos. NASA's human performance studies show that when extraneous load is high, intrinsic load feels harder, even if the task itself hasn't changed. That's why a chart pattern you've seen 1,000 times can suddenly feel confusing when the environment is noisy. It's not that you forgot how to trade, it's that your bandwidth was already eaten alive by side processes. Quick reality check. As you're listening to this, how many tabs do you have open? How many apps are running in the background? How many unfinished tasks are quietly pulling at your attention? That's your extraneous load right now. Multiply that by 10 when you're trading, and you'll understand why your brain feels fried by noon. But even if you understand the types of load, you still need to know how trading itself amplifies every one of them, turning a normal day into a mental pressure cooker. Chapter 3. How trading amplifies cognitive load. If cognitive load is the weight your brain carries, trading is like doing that weightlifting in a hurricane. The very nature of the market turns every type of load, intrinsic, extraneous, and germane, up to 11. Start with time pressure. In most jobs, you can pause, think, and return to a decision later. In trading, a perfect setup can vanish in seconds. That ticking clock doesn't just raise your heart rate, it increases intrinsic load by forcing your brain to process data faster than it's comfortable with. Every second you hesitate, you're juggling analysis, execution, and risk assessment at lightning speed. The market isn't static. It's a stream of ever-changing variables. Price action that looked bullish 10 minutes ago can flip bearish on a single news release. Your brain is built to find stability, patterns it can rely on. But in trading, those patterns can mutate in real time, forcing your working memory into overdrive to constantly update its mental map of the market. And don't forget financial stakes. In most decision-heavy environments, say chess tournaments or video games, mistakes cost pride, not money. In trading, every choice is tied to real financial risk. That alone amplifies extraneous load, because your brain is managing not just the task, but also the emotional weight of potential loss. Neuroscience calls this loss aversion bias, the tendency to overreact to threats of losing something you value. When you combine that with real-time decision pressure, it's like trying to solve math problems while a lion is staring at you. Case in point, in 2015, during the Swiss franc shock, many traders who had solid strategies panicked and exited trades at terrible prices, or froze completely. Their systems didn't fail. Their cognitive load exceeded capacity. The sudden volatility pushed intrinsic load higher. The chaos of conflicting news spiked extraneous load, and the financial pressure of rapid losses hijacked their decision-making systems. Even when markets are calm, trading's constant vigilance requirement drains bandwidth. You're not just making trades, you're scanning for potential setups, managing open positions, watching for news events, and monitoring risk exposure, all in parallel. This multitasking creates what psychologists call task switching cost. Every time you shift focus, your brain burns energy resetting context, like a computer switching between heavy programs. One trader described it perfectly. Trading is like being a goalkeeper in soccer. You might only touch the ball a few times, but you're constantly ready, constantly watching, constantly calculating. That readiness alone is exhausting. This is why traders often feel mentally fried after a seemingly uneventful session. It's not boredom, it's the cost of maintaining high alert in an environment where anything could change in seconds. The market's unpredictability keeps you on edge, and that edge eats bandwidth, minute by minute. So, while cognitive load exists in every profession, trading supercharges it, which means that if you don't actively manage it, you'll be operating in a degraded state without even realizing it. And that's when the symptoms start to creep in, subtle at first, but deadly if ignored. Chapter 4. Symptoms you're overloaded. Cognitive overload doesn't arrive with sirens blaring. It slips in quietly, like a fog settling over your thinking. At first, you barely notice, but the signs are there, and if you learn to spot them early, you can save yourself from a string of costly mistakes. The first symptom is impulsive entries. You see a candle spike and jump in without checking confluence. In the moment, it feels like quick decision-making. In reality, it's your brain cutting corners because it no longer has the bandwidth to run through your normal checklist. The second is abandoning risk rules. That stop loss you've placed religiously for months, suddenly you're moving it just this once. That small exception is rarely about conviction. It's a red flag that your cognitive resources are too low to resist the urge for short-term relief. Another sign, closing winners too early. Not because your target hit, but because your patience is gone. When your mental battery is depleted, uncertainty feels unbearable, so you grab the small win instead of letting your edge play out. Over time, this habit quietly erodes your P&L. Then there's repeating old mistakes you've already fixed. You've done the work, learned the lesson, maybe even journaled it. Yet here it is again, like a ghost from your early trading days. This isn't regression. It's cognitive overload forcing you into autopilot behaviors. Traders also report tunnel vision. You lock onto a single chart, a single time frame, convinced you're seeing the whole picture. But in truth, your perception has narrowed, filtering out important context. NASA's research on task saturation calls this attentional tunneling, when overload forces you to cling to one piece of information at the expense of all others. Here's a symptom that might surprise you: overconfidence. Sometimes when you're mentally exhausted, you actually feel more certain about trades, not less. Your brain, too tired to process nuance, simplifies everything into black and white. That trade looks good, so it must be good. This false clarity has blown up more accounts than fear ever has. Case in point, a futures trader I worked with noticed his biggest losses all happened after 3 consecutive trades, whether they were wins or losses. On review, it wasn't emotion alone, it was mental fatigue. By the 4th decision, his reaction time slowed, his risk assessment degraded, and his discipline frayed. The symptom wasn't a single bad trade. It was the pattern of decay across trades as his cognitive reserves dropped. Before we continue, take a moment right now. How many of these symptoms have you experienced in your last 10 trading sessions? If you're honest, probably more than you'd like to admit. Don't worry, that's not weakness, it's human biology. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Because recognizing symptoms is just the start. The real wake-up call comes when you see the direct connection between your mental state and your P&L, and that connection is more brutal than most traders want to admit. Chapter 5. The Brutal Truth, P&L Connection and Why. Skills don't save you. Trading journals are usually seen as a way to track setups, refine entries, and measure risk-reward ratios. But hidden in those pages is something far more valuable: the invisible thread connecting your mental state to your profit and loss. When you start pairing trade data with notes on your cognitive condition, the picture becomes painfully clear. The days you were overloaded are often the days your P&L bleeds. I once worked with a trader who kept meticulous records, entry times, position sizes, outcomes, screenshots. After a tough month, we decided to add a simple self-rating to each session, a 1 to 10 score of mental freshness. It took just 2 weeks for the pattern to emerge. Trades taken when his mental score was 7 or higher had a win rate of 68%. Trades taken at 5 or lower, only 41%. Same strategy, same market conditions. The only difference was his brain's available bandwidth. Here's the brutal truth. There's a dangerous myth in trading that once you're good enough, you can power through anything. That experience will shield you from fatigue. That skill is the ultimate safety net. But cognitive science and countless blown accounts prove otherwise. The brain is a biological machine, not a magical one. No matter how many hours you've charted, no matter how many markets you've survived, your working memory has hard limits. When it's full, it's full. And once you cross that threshold, even the most seasoned trader starts making the same kinds of mistakes as a beginner. Take Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger, the pilot who famously landed U.S. Airways Flight 1549 on the Hudson River after both engines failed. He's hailed as a hero because in those critical minutes, he made flawless decisions under extreme pressure. But what's often overlooked is that Sully had a lifetime of training to automatically offload key decisions to muscle memory. He wasn't multitasking in his head. He was executing a drilled sequence that freed up bandwidth for the unprecedented parts of the emergency. If he had to think through each step in real time, the outcome could have been very different. Now contrast that with a veteran trader I consulted for, 20 years in the markets, a walking encyclopedia of technical setups. One brutal week, he ignored a high-probability short because he was too busy micromanaging a losing scalp from earlier in the day. By the time he looked back, the short had run 300 points without him. His skill hadn't vanished, it had been sidelined. His bandwidth was tied up in emotional load and over-analysis, leaving nothing for opportunity recognition. Cognitive overload is the great equalizer. It flattens the skill curve, stripping away the advantage you've built over years. Research in medicine backs this up. In a 2010 study, experienced surgeons made as many errors as junior residents when performing complex procedures under time pressure and high cognitive load. The takeaway was clear. Skill doesn't disappear under overload. It just can't be accessed fully. The pathways are there, but the bandwidth to use them is gone. For traders, this means that no amount of chart time will make you immune to the effects of fatigue. If anything, experienced traders are more at risk because they take on more complex analyses, watch more markets, and feel more pressure to perform. Without active bandwidth management, your edge will always erode as the session wears on. And this is why simply getting better isn't enough. To protect your results, you have to measure and manage your cognitive state as ruthlessly as you measure your risk. That's the next step, learning how to quantify something as intangible as mental bandwidth, so you can defend it before it disappears. Chapter 6. Measuring your mental bandwidth. You can't manage what you don't measure. And while mental bandwidth sounds abstract, there are concrete ways to track it, ways that turn a vague feeling into actionable data. The simplest tool is self-assessment scoring. Before you even open your charts, rate your mental freshness on a scale of 1 to 10. This isn't about mood, it's about clarity. Did you sleep well? Are you free from distractions? Do you feel alert? Over time, you'll see clear patterns between your pre-session scores and your trading results. If you notice performance dropping sharply when you start at a 6 or lower, you'll know when to size down or sit out entirely. Then there's the NASA TLX, Task Load Index, a subjective workload scale used in aviation and medical fields. It breaks mental workload into 6 dimensions: mental demand, physical demand, temporal demand, performance, effort, and frustration. Rating yourself on these during or after a session can highlight which type of load is hurting you most. Maybe it's not the analysis that's killing your bandwidth, but the constant time pressure. You can also track decision count. Count every meaningful trading-related decision you make in a session, from choosing which market to focus on, to adjusting stops, to deciding whether to skip a setup. You might be shocked to see that on heavy days, you make dozens more micro decisions than on lighter ones. This matters because each decision chips away at your cognitive reserves. Another overlooked metric is reaction latency. Pay attention to how quickly and accurately you respond to familiar setups. If you find yourself hesitating on trades you'd normally take without pause, or double-checking details you usually know cold, that's a sign your bandwidth is thinning. One futures trader I coached created a mental battery chart in his journal. He started at 100% each morning and deducted rough percentages for each mentally taxing event, -5% for scanning new markets, -10% for executing a complex trade, -15% for managing a loss. By the end of the week, he had a visual representation of his depletion patterns. The insight was immediate. He was burning half his mental battery before the New York Open, leaving little left for the highest quality setups. Here's a practical exercise you can start tomorrow. Set 3 alarms during your trading day, morning, midday, and afternoon. When each alarm goes off, rate your mental clarity from 1 to 10 and jot it down. After a week, compare these ratings to your trade results at those times. The correlation might shock you. The goal here isn't to obsess over numbers, it's to create feedback loops. When you can see that your worst losses happen when your bandwidth score is low, you stop thinking of rest, breaks, and simplified routines as luxuries. They become core parts of your risk management plan. Because once you can measure your bandwidth, you can protect it. And protecting it starts before you even take your first trade of the day, with a deliberate, bandwidth-preserving, pre-trade routine. Let me pause here for a moment. We're halfway through, and if you're feeling a bit of information overload yourself, that's actually perfect. You're experiencing exactly what we're talking about. Notice how your comprehension might be different now than it was in Chapter 1. That's cognitive load in action. The difference is, in trading, that decreased comprehension costs money. Chapter 7. The Pre-Trade Mental Checklist. Great trades don't start when you click the mouse. They start before you even open your platform. If your mental bandwidth is your most precious trading resource, then your pre-trade routine is the firewall that protects it. The problem is, most traders treat preparation as optional, something to get to if there's time. In reality, it's the first trade you make each day, and it's either a profitable investment in your brain's capacity or an early withdrawal from it. A strong pre-trade checklist is about stripping away unnecessary load before the market even has a chance to throw it at you. Step 1. Clear your workspace. Close any tabs, chats, or news feeds that aren't part of your immediate strategy. Every open window is an open loop in your brain, quietly tugging at your attention. Step 2. Set your watch list. Decide in advance which markets you'll trade today and ignore the rest. Scanning 20 charts might feel productive, but it's burning precious bandwidth on noise. Instead, narrow your focus to the instruments that fit your plan and conditions. Step 3. Define your triggers. Write down the exact setups you're looking for, price levels, candle patterns, volume confirmations. This eliminates on-the-fly decision-making, which is the cognitive equivalent of leaving your wallet on the sidewalk. Step 4. Confirm your risk limits. Know your max loss for the day and where you'll stop trading if you hit it. Deciding this in the heat of battle is like trying to build a lifeboat after the ship starts sinking. Step 5. Mental calibration. This is where you check in with yourself. Rate your mental freshness, note any distractions, and commit to rules that protect you when bandwidth runs low. Some traders use a physical ritual here, a deep breath, a short stretch, even writing "trade the plan" on a sticky note in front of them to anchor their state. I worked with a currency trader who added one extra question to his checklist. Would I trust myself with twice my normal position and size right now? If the answer was no, he didn't trade, not because the setups weren't there, but because he knew his brain wasn't. Over the next quarter, his win rate went up 11% purely from avoiding low bandwidth sessions. The beauty of a pre-trade checklist is that it doesn't just save your bandwidth, it actually increases it. By front-loading decisions when your mental battery is full, you free up space for what matters most, execution. And in trading, execution under pressure is everything. Because once the bell rings, the market will come at you fast, and the way you allocate your bandwidth in those moments will make or break your day. Chapter 8. Strategic Decision Allocation. Not all trading decisions are created equal. Some shape your entire session, others barely move the needle. The tragedy is that most traders spend their sharpest mental hours on low-impact choices, and then, when the real make-or-break moment arrives, their cognitive tank is already running on fumes. Think of your mental bandwidth like a stack of poker chips. Every decision you make costs a chip. You can blow them on small pots, constant chart hopping, reacting to every tick, debating with strangers online, or you can save them for the hands that matter. The pros know where to push their stack. This is decision budgeting. It starts by identifying your high-impact decisions, selecting which market to trade today, choosing your A-plus setups, deciding whether to hold through news, determining when to stop trading for the day. These are worth your freshest, clearest thinking. Everything else, scanning lesser charts, over-analyzing marginal setups, tweaking indicators mid-session, should either be automated, delegated, or cut. Mark Minervini once said that his success came not from doing more, but from doing less, better. For him, that meant focusing almost exclusively on a narrow set of chart patterns and ignoring the rest. By reducing the number of decisions he made each day, he preserved his bandwidth for when it mattered, and it showed in his consistency. In trading, automation can be a massive ally here. Let alerts handle the job of monitoring levels while you rest your mind. Let position sizing calculators handle the math, so you're not burning bandwidth on basic arithmetic during a fast-moving setup. If you can take a decision off your plate without losing control, do it. One futures trader I coached ran into trouble by treating every price movement like a potential trade. His journal showed hundreds of micro decisions a day, most of them inconsequential. When we redesigned his process, he cut his daily decision count by 40%, and his profit factor nearly doubled. Not because his system improved, but because his brain was no longer fried by the time the true opportunities arrived. Here's something that might sound counterintuitive. Sometimes the best trade is not taking a trade. If you're at 30% mental battery and a B-grade setup appears, passing on it isn't weakness, it's strategic. You're saving your remaining bandwidth for the A-grade opportunity that might come later. Think of it as ammunition conservation in a long battle. Here's the litmus test. Before making any trading decision, ask yourself, is this a $1 decision or a $10,000 decision? If it's a $1 decision, automate it, pre-decide it, or ignore it. If it's a $10,000 decision, make sure you're bringing your full mental capacity to the table, because the market won't warn you when the day's most important decision is coming. And if you've already spent your best thinking on scraps, you'll miss your shot. Chapter 9. The Role of Rituals. In high-performance environments, rituals aren't superstition. They're cognitive reset buttons. Athletes have them, surgeons have them, and the best traders use them too. The market is a marathon disguised as a sprint. And without deliberate resets, your mental battery will quietly drain until there's nothing left for the moves that matter. A ritual in this context is a repeatable action designed to clear mental clutter and restore focus. It could be as simple as a 2-minute breathing exercise between trades, a short walk around the room after closing a position, or even a set routine for how you review your charts before each potential entry. The point isn't the activity itself, it's the state change it triggers. One equities trader I worked with had a ritual he called the reset minute. Anytime he exited a trade, win or lose, he'd push his chair back, close his eyes, and take 10 slow breaths. He said it wasn't about calming down, but about wiping the mental slate clean so the next trade didn't carry the emotional residue of the last. Over 6 months, his average hold time increased, and his tendency to revenge trade dropped sharply. Another example comes from poker legend Phil Ivey. Between hands, he often closes his eyes for a few seconds, visualizing a calm, controlled mindset. In trading, you can apply the same principle. Use brief rituals to step out of the market's emotional current, regain perspective, and re-enter with clarity. These rituals also serve as anchors, cues that tell your brain, we're back in control. When repeated consistently, they become almost Pavlovian. The act of sipping a certain tea before the open, or doing a specific stretch before scanning charts, can trigger the mental state you need to perform at your best. The key is to choose rituals that are short, intentional, and easy to repeat. Overcomplicating them defeats the purpose. If your ritual takes 15 minutes and disrupts your workflow, you won't stick to it. But a 30-second micro ritual between trades? That's sustainable. And there's a hidden benefit. Rituals create natural breaks in your decision-making flow. They give your working memory a chance to offload processed information before taking on new data. This is exactly how elite performers in other fields sustain high-quality output for hours without degrading performance. So instead of grinding non-stop from the opening bell to the close, adopt rituals that punctuate your trading day with moments of clarity. That way, when the next opportunity appears, you're not reacting from a fatigued, overloaded state. You're stepping in with a reset mind. Of course, clearing your own mental clutter is only half the battle. The other half is dealing with the constant stream of distractions the market throws at you, the extraneous load that eats away at your edge. Chapter 10. Managing Extraneous Load. If intrinsic load is the unavoidable difficulty of trading, extraneous load is the junk weight you choose to carry, often without realizing it. It's the constant alerts, the never-ending news cycle, the open chat rooms buzzing with hot takes. None of these help you execute better trades, yet they siphon off your most precious resource, mental bandwidth. Here's the trap. Much of the extraneous load feels productive. You tell yourself you're staying informed when you have 5 news feeds open. You justify checking Discord mid-session because someone might post a great setup. But in reality, each of these interruptions forces your brain to task switch, to dump one set of mental variables and load another. And every switch comes with a cost. Neuroscience calls it the switching penalty, and studies show it can take up to 23 minutes to fully recover peak focus after a distraction. I once reviewed the trading day of a client who swore his poor performance came from bad market conditions. We screen recorded his session. In just 2 hours, he switched between his charts, a news website, and a Telegram group over 40 times. By the time his A-plus setup arrived, he was mentally scattered, second-guessing his read, and entered late, turning what should have been a clean win into a loss. The setup didn't fail, his attention did. Reducing extraneous load is an exercise in ruthless minimalism. Start by identifying your biggest distractions, and either removing them completely or quarantining them outside of trading hours. That could mean turning off all non-essential alerts, muting chat groups until the session ends, or using a separate device for market news so it's not cluttering your trading screens. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine trying to have a deep conversation with someone while 3 TVs are playing different channels. Your phone is buzzing every 30 seconds, and someone's tapping you on the shoulder, asking random questions. That's what most traders do to their brains every single day, then wonder why they can't focus when it matters. Environment matters too. A cluttered desk is a cluttered mind. Multiple studies in cognitive psychology show that physical clutter increases cognitive load by forcing your brain to constantly process irrelevant visual information. Clearing your workspace is like closing background apps on your phone. Suddenly, the system runs smoother. If you're serious about this, try this experiment tomorrow. Trade with only your charts open. No news, no chat, no second screen with YouTube. Just you and the market. I guarantee you'll feel the difference in mental clarity within the first hour. Because the less noise you have to process, the more bandwidth you can devote to recovery and building resilience. And without recovery, even the most disciplined trader will eventually hit the wall. Chapter 11. Cognitive Recovery Protocol. You wouldn't run a marathon without water stops. Yet traders routinely expect their brains to operate at peak output for hours without a single moment of deliberate recovery. The truth is, if you want sustained performance, you need a system for replenishing mental bandwidth during the session, not just after it's over. Recovery isn't a luxury, it's maintenance. Just like a high-performance engine overheats without cool-down laps, your cognitive system overheats without intentional breaks. The good news is, recovery doesn't require long pauses. Short targeted resets can restore surprising amounts of bandwidth. Start with micro breaks. Research shows that even a 60 to 90-second pause to stand, stretch, or look at something distant can reset visual fatigue and reduce mental strain. One trader I know sets a timer to chime every 45 minutes. When it goes off, he pushes away from the screen, walks to the window, and takes 5 deep breaths before returning. His journal shows a clear drop in impulsive trades after adopting this habit. Then there's structured disengagement, intentionally stepping away from trading tasks to let your subconscious process. This could be a 10-minute walk, a quick workout, or even making coffee. These activities shift your brain out of its intense analytical mode, allowing working memory to flush and reset. Surgeons in long operations have been shown to maintain higher accuracy when they take short, planned breaks. The same principle applies here. Sensory reset is another powerful tool. Change what your eyes, ears, and body are experiencing. Dim your screens for a few minutes, switch your chart colors to a calmer palette, or play ambient sounds that counteract the adrenaline of market noise. This signals to your nervous system that it's safe to downshift, reducing the background stress that quietly drains bandwidth. And don't underestimate nutrition and hydration. The brain runs on glucose and oxygen. A small snack of complex carbs and protein, or a few sips of water, can literally fuel better decision-making. One options trader I worked with saw measurable improvement in focus by adding a protein bar and water break mid-session. Simple, but effective. The key to a cognitive recovery protocol is making it automatic. Don't wait until you feel fried to take a break. By then, you've already been trading in a degraded state. Schedule your recovery points just like you schedule your trades. Treat them as non-negotiable parts of your process. Because without recovery, even the most disciplined trader will eventually hit the wall. And once you've hit it, your brain won't bounce back instantly. The rest of the session will be compromised. That's why the next step isn't just about recovery, but about building long-term resilience so your mental battery starts each day stronger and drains more slowly. Chapter 12. Building Cognitive Resilience. Recovery keeps you from crashing mid-session. Resilience makes you harder to drain in the first place. It's the difference between constantly refilling a small water bottle and carrying a larger one that lasts all day. In trading, resilience means your mental battery starts fuller, holds charge longer, and bounces back faster after heavy use. The foundation is sleep hygiene. No supplement, no hack, no mindset trick can replace high-quality sleep. Your working memory, emotional regulation, and reaction speed all depend on it. Studies from the National Sleep Foundation show that even a single night of reduced sleep can impair decision-making as much as a moderate alcohol buzz. For traders, that means walking into the market effectively intoxicated, except the hangover is hidden in your P&L. Next is physical fitness. Cardio exercise improves blood flow and oxygen delivery to the brain, literally feeding the engine that powers your trading. Strength training, meanwhile, has been linked to better stress tolerance. Your mind stays steadier under pressure. You don't need to become an athlete, but 20 to 30 minutes of movement most days will change the quality of your focus in front of the screens. Nutrition plays a role too. Stable blood sugar equals stable decision-making. Big spikes and crashes in glucose mirror emotional highs and lows in your trading. Balanced meals with complex carbs, lean protein, and healthy fats help maintain even energy levels throughout the session. Then there's cognitive training. Just like you can increase physical stamina, you can train mental endurance. Activities like memory games, chess, or even learning a new skill build neural efficiency. The goal isn't to overload your brain, but to expand its processing capacity so regular trading demands feel lighter. And perhaps most overlooked, emotional resilience. The mental load of trading isn't just analytical, it's emotional. Losses, missed opportunities, and streaks all generate psychological weight. Mindfulness practices, journaling, and even therapy can strengthen your ability to process these emotions without letting them hijack your bandwidth. One trader I coached started each morning with a 10-minute visualization of executing trades calmly, regardless of outcome. Over time, his emotional spikes flattened, his post-loss decision quality improved, and he reported feeling less tired after the same hours at the screen. Here's the truth nobody talks about. The best traders aren't necessarily the smartest or most knowledgeable. They're the ones with the most cognitive resilience. They can maintain quality decision-making longer than their competition. In a game where everyone eventually gets tired, the last one standing with a clear mind wins. Building resilience is like upgrading your brain's hardware. You can't avoid cognitive load in trading, but with a stronger system, you can carry more for longer without tipping into overload. And when you combine resilience with the measurement, recovery, and decision management strategies we've covered, you end up with a powerful edge. Which brings us to the final piece. Understanding that mental bandwidth isn't just a hidden factor in trading. It can be the factor that sets you apart from 99% of the market. Chapter 13, The Mental Bandwidth Edge. Most traders chase edges they can see, a sharper indicator, a cleaner setup, a faster news feed. But the edges that last are often invisible. Mental bandwidth is one of them. It's not on your chart, not in your broker's dashboard, and not in the back tests you run at night. Yet it quietly determines whether you execute your edge or sabotage it. Think of bandwidth as the bridge between your skill and your results. You can have a Ferrari of a trading system, but if the bridge is cracked, you'll never get that power to the other side. Protecting bandwidth isn't about making you smarter. It's about ensuring your smartest self actually shows up when it matters. When you start treating cognitive load as a tradable asset, everything changes. You stop overtrading because you see the cost in bandwidth, not just in dollars. You stop chasing noise because you recognize the drain it puts on your decision quality. You start structuring your day so your best hours align with your biggest opportunities. The irony is that most traders lose not because they lack skill, but because they run out of bandwidth before the real move even happens. They spend the morning making low-value decisions, burn their battery on distractions, and then face the afternoon's best setup in a mentally degraded state. The market doesn't beat them. Their own biology does. Your mental bandwidth is like capital. You can spend it recklessly or invest it wisely. And just like capital, once it's gone for the day, it's gone. The traders who thrive year after year aren't necessarily the ones with the most complex systems or the boldest risk profiles. They're the ones who consistently show up with the mental capacity to execute their plan flawlessly. I'll leave you with this thought. Imagine two versions of yourself. One trades with unlimited mental bandwidth, never gets tired, never loses focus. The other is you right now, with all your human limitations. How much better would that first version trade? 20% better, 50% better. That gap, that difference, that's what's available to you if you master bandwidth management. You can't become superhuman, but you can get surprisingly close by simply not wasting what you have. This is the hidden edge. If you learn to measure it, protect it, and grow it, you can trade at your true potential while others quietly degrade under the weight of overload. And in a zero-sum game like trading, where every mistake you avoid is money someone else leaves on the table, that edge compounds fast. Your 3-day challenge. If you've made it this far, you now understand something most traders never will, that your mental bandwidth isn't just a background factor. It's the silent governor on your performance. You've seen how overload creeps in, how it shows up in your P&L, and how even the most skilled traders crumble when their cognitive resources are gone. So, here's your 3-day challenge, and I want you to write this down. Day 1. Tomorrow, before you trade, rate your mental freshness from 1 to 10. Only trade if you're at 7 or above. Track every trade with that morning's score. See the correlation for yourself. Day 2. Implement one recovery ritual. Set a timer for every 45 minutes. When it goes off, step away for 60 seconds. Just 60 seconds. Walk, breathe, look out the window, then return. Notice how your clarity changes. Day 3. Eliminate one source of extraneous load completely. Close that news tab. Mute that Discord. Turn off those non-essential alerts. Trade with just your charts and your plan. Feel the difference in mental space. If you commit to this 3-day experiment, comment bandwidth below. Not just to tell me, but to tell yourself. Make it public. Make it real. And here's something specific for you to track. What time of day do you make your worst trades? I'm willing to bet it's when your mental battery is lowest. Once you identify that pattern, you can either stop trading at that time or implement a recovery protocol before it hits. This one insight alone could transform your results. Remember this: strategies, indicators, and risk models can give you an edge on paper, but in the heat of the market, that edge only lives as long as your brain can carry it. Protect your bandwidth like you protect your capital, and you'll find yourself trading in a league where most can't keep up. Not because you know more, but because you can think more for longer when it counts. Last question before you go. What's the one bandwidth leak you know is killing your trading right now? Name it in the comments. Own it, because the first step to plugging that leak is admitting it exists. Your mental bandwidth is your trading's most valuable asset. Guard it, measure it, invest it wisely. Because in the end, the market doesn't care how smart you are. It only cares how smart you are in the moment you click that mouse. Tomorrow, when you sit down to trade, you have a choice. Trade like you always have, burning through your mental resources until you're running on fumes. or trade with the knowledge that your bandwidth is finite, precious, and manageable. The edge is yours to take. The question is, will you?